Keelah all, welcome back to Soul Mechanics yet again. I know I'm pumping them out like they ain't nothing at this point, but I'm pretty amped up. I'm having a good time here. A lot of work to do, but we're pummeling through it as best we can. In any case, this video is a continuation for the Secular Theology course finally, because we needed to get that going, but it's specifically for a specific person that I've been speaking with. That his name is Brook. I'm not going to give his full name because he might not want me to, but Brook, if you actually are watching this, please do. I'm going to consider you a friend. Okay, I know that we've had various disagreements and whatnot, but you've actually stuck with it and you've continued to communicate with me, so I'm going to go ahead and consider you a friend, and I do care about your well-being, and I can see that your well-being is in a spot of danger, and I need to speak to this, and I put a lot of effort and work into this, so please watch it through. And also I'd like to suggest that you watch the linked video as well. I know it's very long, it's like 36 minutes or so, but on one hand, you know, as I said, I put a lot of effort into it, a lot of work into it, and it's that one wasn't specifically for you, but that one, it's for anybody like you. It's speaking directly to and encompassing nearly the entirety of at least my understanding of biblical scripture and of Christianity in essence, and religion ultimately. It tells the whole story, and it gets everything I need to across fairly well. But at least this one, please watch through to the end. The other one, I very highly recommend it. As I was saying, A, I put a lot of work into it, but B, I've watched your videos, and I actually liked a few of them, which I'd like to speak to one of them specifically. I don't know if it was one about a dream that you had. I don't know if it was actually your dream, because it seems like you were reciting, so I'm not sure if it was actually your dream or you had gotten that from somewhere else. But if it was your dream, and anybody's dream essentially, but if it was your dream, what happened in that dream is it's a blatant message to you that you were witnessing the existence of God, but you couldn't see it because there was a wall between you. Okay, that wall is this belief structure that you have. That's what's blocking you from seeing God. And even you said in the prayer that you did in the beginning, may we see you as you are, or may we know you as you are and not as we imagine you to be. You understand, the Bible is man's imagination. The Holy Scripture, and really anything that we come across, there's no way for us to actually view the real God and know it as it is. It's impossible, because it is impossible. We get into that, that's all throughout this channel, that it is an impossible happening. It's a mystery. That's the point of it. That's how it exists, because it comes from out of nothing. It is an impossible happening that allows for all possibility to exist. It's the divine dichotomy. The impossible exists in order for all possibility to happen. And it never happened. And in this dream, you said you felt out of sync, like you felt as though you were so very far out of sync with God. Again, that's speaking to the happening occurrence. Your current situation is precisely that. It's entirely out of sync because you're blocked by this wall that is your belief. And when you were exposed to God, he said some pretty awful things about himself, like, and this is what you've been taught to think about yourself. This is speaking to how you actually feel about yourself and where you're coming from, the existence that you're living in. And this is very important. Please pay attention here, man. That exposure is what you need, but that exposure is damaging you because there's a part of you that knows how you're living and what you're being is so far out of sync with what God actually is and intends for you to be. Now, this video is also going to be speaking to the rapture. We're going to touch upon that because that's a big deal, and it's essentially the reason why I've been talking to this person, Brook. We were speaking on that, and it's also going to present what I think of as being the voice of God, essentially, how values present themselves through, even if people try to hide it in lies, even if people tell lies and try to hide the truth, it's going to get through. Spotters can see it because the values are presented. Like, for example, speaking to Jesus' teachings. Now, I need to make it very clear here that it's very obvious that every Christian, every true Christian, lives in an entire contradiction, a total contradiction to Jesus' teachings. You tell people that people need to follow Jesus' teachings, yet you don't, and you don't even seem to understand what they are. Jesus taught people that we were all one, that we were one with God. I and the Father are one, and you are the same as me. You too can do as I have done. That's what Jesus taught. That's what Jesus was trying to get across, yet you contradict that. And Jesus was showing people what he can do, essentially telling us that rules bend, that rules can be broken, that we are making the rules, that he was able to manipulate the rules in play. The physics of the system he was able to actually manipulate. If we're presuming that Jesus was a real person and that these things actually happened, that's the presumption we're going to have here, although there's evidence to the contrary all over the place that Jesus did not actually exist. I'm going to go ahead and give the benefit of the doubt. Now, Jesus taught so many different things, including reincarnation, which is something that you contradict. It's spoken of that the pharaohs essentially were based in reincarnation. The idea of a pharaoh was that this person was reborn in a new body, and that the pharaoh was always living in a new body, a new life. And this pharaoh was referred to as being a god, which is where the concept of a biblical god is going to have come from. Calling a man a god and claiming that they've been reborn. Now, maybe they have. Maybe they have been reborn. That's entirely possible, because we do in fact know that reincarnation is an actual phenomenon. We know, we can't prove it, but we do have evidence for it that is pretty heavy. It's and believe me, I've tried to argue with it. I'm an investigator. I don't have a belief system in play. I'm investigating for myself, and based on my experience and what the evidence presents, I'm saying that it's pretty difficult to argue reincarnation. Now, the Bible speaks to an eternity in play, which we do have an eternity construct in play, but eternity essentially is as they're mentioning it, is going to be speaking to now, because now is the ever-existent eternal moment, and there is no past, there is no future, because every passing moment is now. It's impossible to escape that, and you're always here. You can't get out of here. Wherever you may be, it's always going to be here from your perspective. Now plus here equals nowhere. That's that's God speaking. That's, God. I like to use the term God because I believe in it. That's a belief that I have, I suppose you could say, but it's not really a belief. It's just I prefer it. It's a preference. I like it. I have respect for the God concept. And the Bible and what it teaches, what people preach from the Bible, is contradictory to the very concept of an existing God and detrimental to it. As you can see, atheism is on the rise, and this is because of how vile and disgusting the preaching from the Bible is, that it's causing people to discard the God concept altogether, and that pisses me off, because I have faith in it. I believe in that system. That's the only belief that I have is that this system is real and it works, and that, yes, we are making the rules as we go along, that what Jesus taught about us being one with God is true. That's what I believe in. That's the only belief that I have that I cannot prove, through evidence. But as I've spoken to before, the story was altered so many times. It was changed throughout history and edited and rewritten, and Jesus' teachings were altered later on thereafter, but they managed to leave in, for example, the point where he's on the cross and he says, "Why hast thou forsaken me?" Why would he say that? Why would he say that unless he did not expect to be murdered? That's speaking directly to, the contradictory factor of it. They leave that in because that that shines true. That's a value that shines true. Now, these are obvious values, but Jesus was murdered for telling others that they are God. Jesus was murdered for telling others that they have power, that they are responsible, and that they do have power over existence, that they are one with God. That's a value that shines through, because, you know, we have Christians going around telling people, no, that's blasphemous, you know, that as it's viewed now, that's blasphemous. That's blasphemy. It's heresy. It's not to be said that you are one with God. Impossible. Yet that's what Jesus taught you very clearly, and that value is shining through. It's a real value that speaks to you. And then later on, they added the idea of thought crimes. Jesus introducing the concept of thought crimes, that even if you think about something, you can be damned for that, damned for all eternity. Which again, speaking to a hell, which didn't exist back then. There was no hell, there was no Satan in the original scripture. That was added later by the Catholics. That's not real. That was never actual canon to this story. But later on, the concept of hell and eternal damnation was added along with these thought crimes that could damn a person just by thinking about something. Now, this has a real value speaking through it. The value is that your intention can create your reality, and that you are, in fact, eternally existing in either a heaven or a hell based on the intentions that you have. And right now, for you, for example, and for most Christians, I'm sure the intentions are to feel down about yourself, to repress yourself. The intentions are to feel bad about who you are for no good reason whatsoever, to constantly place yourself in a subsidiary factor wherein you are enslaved by something and victimized by something, where you're born evil and you need to feel bad about yourself all the time. And the shit that you said about yourself, what he said about himself, I told him he deserves to be proud of himself for what he's accomplished, and he tells me that no, he deserves to die. And then he speaks in his videos about how he's a disgusting person and his sins are... Please, come on, man. You don't... As I said, I'm considering you to be a friend. Don't fucking talk about yourself that way. That hurts. That's shitty. Like, why the fuck would you do that? Because you've been taught to by the Bible and by your church. We are existing in an eternity, a consistent happening, and yes, we are reincarnated, which means we keep coming back to this. We keep coming back to this heaven or hell. That's where we go to in our afterlife, depending on how we feel about ourselves. Right now, you're feeling about yourself as though you're in a hell, as though you're in a damnation. You are damning yourself. And you're able to do that because you are one with God. It's very simple. These values shine through fucking blatantly. You can't miss it. It's right in your face. Jesus told you this very clearly. But what Jesus said was contradicting the Old Testament, which is something else that you still believe in. You still believe in the Old Testament even though Jesus told you it was false. That this other God, this God that was ruling in that, is very likely just a pharaoh, a person, claiming to be God, using the title of God to control people, and using this religion to control people. And Jesus was crucified because he spoke against that, because he said that's not true, that's not correct. No, we are all one with God, and we all have our own sovereignty. Now, people speaking of deserving to die and feeling that way, speaking that they're sinful and that they're evil and vile and disgusting in some way, that's damning yourself. That's placing yourself in a hell scenario. And yes, when you die, you're going to go to that hell scenario by being reborn into a new life constructed of those values. It's the values in play that are constructing your reality. Now, the key to understanding the Bible is going to be the commandments, which the commandments were changed on various occasions. The commandments were altered, but once Jesus set the 11th commandment, that sealed it. That was the end of it. That's where the commandments are set in stone, and the commandments we know are written in stone, literally. So that's where that's going to be at, is those 11 commandments as they're set at that point. But they were altered various times before that, and some of the older ones were kept, like thou shalt hold no God before me. Now, these are vain constructs. These present God as being a vain self-absorbed, pretentious character that cares only for himself and wants people to worship him, and just cannot have anybody doing anything other than worshiping him entirely, which is very self-deprecating, or ultimately self-deprecating, but presented as being narcissistic ultimately, and caring only for himself and self-absorbed character. Now, there are values that still shine through even in those. Thou shalt hold no God before me. Me, who is me? You are. You are me. Every one of us is me. There is no other me. There is no you, really. There is only me. All of us are me. Thou shalt place no God before me. It's right there. It's speaking its truth to you. Beyond that, the other commandments, and there are other little tricks like that. If you pay attention, there are other little tricks like that. That the Bible is full of amazing values. The thing is that they're hidden in plain sight, and most people don't see them because they're listening to what somebody else tells them to think about it. Got to see it, view it for yourself from a first-person perspective. If you consider that Jesus' teachings are true and that you are one with God, then view it all from a first-person perspective. What does that mean? Thou shalt hold no God before me. That means that you should not be placing anything other than yourself as the God figure. You should be trusting in yourself. Yet, of course, there's going to be other. There was somebody trolling me on his page, on his YouTube channel. A woman named Louisa who was trolling me, and she said I'm the son of a devil, which I had to educate her for the most part that the concept of devil comes from the concept of demon, which originally comes from the word daemon. This is before the biblical scripture. The word daemon meant higher intellect or genius. The word daemon was referring to the higher self, or through the theories of eternal recurrence, the daemon and the eidolon is the immediate ephemeral self, the body, while the daemon is the perpetual self that lives on. And if you relive this life, essentially the idea here is that you will relive the life as many times as you need to in order to get it the way that you want it to be, because you have that power. You can do that. You can do anything. Jesus showed you very clearly you can do any fucking thing you want to. It's your world, it's your life, you are the God presence. Now, the eidolon will live this life, your character, your persona as you know it, is going to live this life repeatedly, while the daemon figure is the persona that remembers the last time you did it and actually guides you. That's the spirit guide, essentially. The higher self is this perpetual self that you have in play that has relived this life and knows what you've done before, knows what the right or wrong choices might be, and is trying to guide you. And that's where your intuition is largely going to be coming from. Ultimately, it's going to be the 100% of your brain. It's the entirety of your faculties, all of your memory intact and being made use of. And the Bible very clearly speaks out, saying that demons are evil, that they're pieces of yourself that are registering to them as being demons are to be ejected and destroyed, and that you are to distrust your own heart, which is your soul, by the way. Your heart, your emotions, what you feel, your intuition, that's the reality of what your soul is, or your psyche. And the Bible tells you to distrust this, to discard it. It tells you to trust the Bible over your own soul. This is pretty easy to get, man. It's not like you're very invested in this very out there kind of understanding of it, which is, I'm sorry, it's just that it's very difficult to understand how you get this far into that, this deep into that fucking nightmare that you're gonna torture yourself because of this book. That, I mean, really, dude, there's no way that anybody, if you were not brought up in that and taught to believe that by someone, there's really no way that you could honestly believe that. You're lying to yourself if you believe in the entirety of this scripture as being true. Now the values in it shine true, and this is because the scriptures were stolen. The stories were stolen from earlier philosophical methodologies, earlier understandings, earlier elder traditions that actually knew what they were talking about. They had a good grasp on the reality of our situation, but Christianity took all of these and put them all together to serve their own interests. Man wrote the Bible to suit their own interests, political agenda. They wanted people to follow their rules, so they invented this story. It's very fucking simple, dude. Come on. Now, as I was saying, the key is the commandments, because if you read through the commandments, A, thou shalt place no God before me. B, thou shalt not worship a graven image, yet you worship the image of Jesus nailed to a cross, dead. That's a graven image. That is precisely it, and that's gonna be. I can't see that as being anything other than a joke for them to be these people to be laughing at you. Like, you have it right in front of you. Thou shalt worship no graven image, yet worship the cross and the image of Jesus dead on the cross. That's a joke, man. It's in your face. It's a fucking prank. There's somebody behind the scenes, maybe not anymore, maybe everybody actually forgot that that's what was happening, but that is obviously what's happening. It's a joke. They're playing a prank on you, and they're laughing in your face that you actually buy this, where it contradicts itself immediately in the first two commandments. Then the remainder of the commandments speak the truth about God, where it says in the Bible very clearly, you shall know that I have come by these signs, and then it presents the commandments speaking to precisely what God is and precisely what God is not. God is not murdersome. God is not a thief. God is not a liar. These are presented in these commandments, and if you go back and you read through the scripture, every time that you see God breaking one of these commandments, those commandments are telling you point of fact that is a fraud. That is not the real God. That is a pharaoh or a king or somebody presenting themselves as God, lying to you. And for God's sake, God does not destroy civilizations. God does not murder people. The presence of an existing God figure, depending on our decisions, could wind up destroying our civilization, and that's going to speak to the 7 seals. Now, as we've spoken to in the imperative, there are 7 chakras, and there are 7 stages to this crisis scenario wherein we transform. The Kundalini is awakened, and the ultimate, the greater energies are released into the world, and we go through this spiritual, physiological transformation. And the whole world has a chakra system. The entirety of humanity has a chakra system, and that's what the 7 seals speak to, the 7 stages of this development. And how we handle them is going to determine whether or not we actually survive them. And we have been through this cycle repeatedly, over and over again, and we did not survive it. Our civilization was destroyed because we were not properly prepared, and it's largely because so many people were fixated on this ridiculous belief structure that led them astray. They didn't know how to handle it. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what was happening because they still thought that every storm was because God is angry with them. They're living in the Stone Age, unable to pick up and move and actually develop themselves from an objective, realistic perspective. Now, speaking to the rapture is not actually canon to the Bible. It's not presented as a biblical teaching. I don't know if you were, Brook, if you were actually speaking to that as being canon or not. I don't know if you think it is or not. I don't really understand what you were trying to say there, but ultimately saying that I guess the rapture will happen but isn't happening, but actually the rapture is happening. The rapture is coming from, yet again, very much elder traditions way back before that, where the general idea is that at some point throughout the stages of this crisis scenario, the world is going to split into 2 timelines. One is going to be the timeline wherein we don't make it because people are stuck in these belief structures and can't adapt. And they don't make it through, while the other timeline is going to be those who actually ascend and shift and make it into the next stage of development ultimately. And we are, in fact, seeing now millions of people vanishing. People all over the world just disappearing. And nobody can say how or why or where they went. Nobody ever finds them. They just disappear. And of course, a lot of these could be attributed to serial killers or something of that nature, but not all of them. not and even putting a dent in that number, I'd say maybe 10% at best could possibly be taken by serial killers or by some cult or something, you know. The rest of them are in fact just vanishing, and we have evidence of cultures, entire civilizations just vanishing into thin air. That's what happened. They ascended. They went to the next stage. And that's what the idea of a rapture of Jesus taking people to heaven. Of course, it's not going to be Jesus, it's just God. Except you think Jesus is God and that there are no others, where in fact Jesus already told you that you are a God too, that you are God as well. That he's not the only one, and he told you not to worship him. He told you, do not worship me, I am the same as you. He told you that. It's clearly written in your scriptures. Jesus said, I and the Father are one, and you and I are the same. Do not worship me. I am not a deity. You are the same as me. Yet you contradict this daily, and you teach other people to believe the contradiction. Now, that's speaking to that. Actually, I think that covers pretty much all of what I wanted to say here, is that, you know, like, for example, the 7 seals with the chakras, that's speaking a truth that's hidden in the lie. The lie is that this is inevitable, and that there is 7 seals to be broken by angels and trumpets sounding that's going, which, by the way, we hear trumpets sounding now, too. Do you think this is all a hoax, dude? No. This is actually happening. But nobody believes it because they're stuck in the belief system that you have, wherein they're living in a fictitious nightmare. And they don't actually believe the reality in what they read. You don't actually believe the reality in what you read. It's evident because you contradict the teachings of it. You obviously do not have a handle. And really, I worry about you, man. I very highly suggest that you do watch the other video. I'm sorry that this one's so long. I'm sorry the other one's so long. But there's a lot to be said here. And I really do care about you. And I mean, if you really feel that bad, if you get, like, you know, suicidal or something, you can contact the initiative. We'll put you in touch with people that can help you. We have people that can help you. So please do that. Anyway, this is speaking to the, you know, continuation of the Secular Theology course. Thank you all for watching. Keelah. That means this is our home. Let's pay tribute and homage to our home. Keelah. Taerve siari means forward together, all as one. Let's move together, all as one. Let's unite here. This is something that needs to get done. Taerve siari. Namasté means I recognize God in you. I recognize you and I as one. I recognize deity in all of us. Namasté, Brook.